Okay, let's get started by looking at how we can place ceilings in your model. Now, as you're thinking about ceilings, some of the important things to think about is that we can either sketch a boundary or pick the boundary, and we should think about whether we're going to be doing it on a room-by-room basis, so for the entire building. And then as we place the ceilings, you're going to find that ceilings have properties, and we can sort of set those properties either before or afterwards. But let's go ahead and open up the ceiling tool and take a look at what's there. So if I open the ceiling tool in the ribbon, you'll see that under the type selector, I have a couple of different choices there. I have a basic ceiling type. Right now, that's just offering generic. That's if you have a ceiling that's just a single layer of a material. And you have compound ceilings. Those are ones that are made up of several layers of material. So the ACT, which are acoustical ceiling tile ceilings, are different patterns that you typically find in commercial office buildings. That'll have both the tile layer as well as a support layer behind them. There's also gypsum wallboard on metal studs. So you just need to kind of choose what type of ceiling is more appropriate for you. And if necessary, you can choose a ceiling type. You can duplicate it. And if, for example, if you just want a single layer of gypsum wallboard, you can make something like that. We'll edit the material. And I'll say just gypsum wallboard. Oops, there we go. Okay, notice it has an offset there. Notice though it doesn't have a thickness. It's really just a skin. Okay, and that's just something to kind of keep track of. So let's go ahead and instead use one of the other types. For example, I'll use the acoustical ceiling tiles, maybe the 2x2. That's kind of a nice modern look. And as I think about placing these ceiling tiles, the important thing to think about is really, am I going to sketch a ceiling or am I going to put an automatic ceiling in there? And let's kind of show you the impact of each. If you choose automatic ceiling, the idea is Revit will find for you a continuous boundary within some walls and place a ceiling there. Now, as we're placing our ceilings, you might notice I'm in a floor plan view. What I want to do is switch up to a ceiling plan view. So I'm looking up as opposed to down. You can see the ceiling that I'm placing. So I'm going to go to the ceiling plan of level 1. It's a little bit cleaner there. And again, go back to that ceiling tool. If I say automatic ceiling, let's see what happens if I hover over the individual rooms. Now, as I'm hovering over the individual rooms, it might be a little hard to see. Let me zoom on in a little closer. You might notice that there's a little red highlight that's showing me the boundaries of the different rooms. And if I place a ceiling automatically, I can just click in the middle of a room somewhere and it'll place it. So that's kind of nice and quick and easy as a way of doing things. Now, if you prefer instead, or if you have an unusual shape that you need to cover that isn't necessarily contained within specific rooms, you can sketch a ceiling instead. Okay, and sketching works very much like you sketch floors or you sketch other types of boundaries. We have the choice of either drawing or picking. As always, I tend to prefer picking things because if I can pick a wall, if the wall changes, the boundary of the ceiling will change too. So I'm going to choose to pick the walls. And I have the choice over here whether I want to extend into the core or maybe I'll just pick a face. I'm going to extend into the core. That way I'm going to go to the stud face as opposed to the face of the gypsum wallboard. Okay, and now I can pick that wall, this wall, and finally the fourth wall. Now, as usual with boundaries, I'm going to have to follow my pink line boundary rules. So I'm going to do a little trimming around the edges. Finish that ceiling up. I should mention as we've been placing these ceilings, actually one of the important things to note is as you're placing them, it's the height of the ceiling. Right now I'm setting them to 8 feet above level 1. I can change that either before or afterwards. If I can choose the ceiling, for example, I think I got that one. Oh, I'm automatically sketching. I'm putting a second one there. That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is actually see if I can grab the ceiling, and that might take a little work with some tabbing to get it. I think I have it now. I could change that and make it at a different height. For example, I could make it 9 feet, something like that. Notice also we have a room bounding property. If something is room bounding, then it's going to be considered as enclosing the space, which is going to be important when we start thinking about HVAC and kind of some energy considerations. So I'll set that one to 9. It'll be just a little bit higher. Super. One last thing that I want to kind of show you, that's kind of a case you may run into every once in a while, is ceilings don't always have to be flat. They can be sloped too. So let's think about how you can define a slope defining ceiling. Okay, it's kind of like a slope defining roof. What we're going to do is, again, go to the ceiling tool. I'll sketch the ceiling this time because I'm going to want to change the boundaries a little bit. Again, I'll pick the boundaries again. So I'll come on in here, choose those boundaries as being the boundary for the ceiling there. I'll do the trimming. But like with roofs, I'm going to point out something called slope defining. So for example, if I want to have that be the base of a ceiling and have things slope up from that base, I can say define slope, and it turns on a little triangle showing right now it's having a slope of 1 in 12. Okay, so you might think about when are you going to use that? And it's really whenever you have a sloping ceiling. Often that happens if you have a sloping roof and you need to put a ceiling underneath it. But you know, in most office buildings that isn't the case, but there will be cases when you need that. An important limitation to know about though, in terms of slope defining is, well, it's showing me that I can define the slope in both ways. I don't think of it that way, but let me see if that'll actually work. I might be surprised. Nope, you can't have more than one slope defined. I think that's misleading you a little bit. I'm going to go back, and it's sort of what I thought it would be, and that is that you can only define the slope from one side. So if you do that, it won't look very different in the plan view, but if I go to a 3D view, let's go popping around over here. You might see some of the different cases. Here's the ceiling that's raised a little bit higher than the other ceilings. This is the one that's actually slope defining. You might be able to see that that is sloping a little bit. But that's how you go ahead and create ceilings in your model. Go ahead and give it a try.